Hour ago, the judge did not allow cameras inside the courtroom, but did allow still photographer to take this still photo before the hearing began. It's the only photo we'll have of the president right now when he was in court today for that hearing. He's flanked by his attorneys from both sides. Trump was formally charged with 34 felony counts. The charges stem from his role in an alleged hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels over an alleged affair he had with her. The payment made during the final weeks of the 2016 presidential campaign, in addition to the not guilty plea, by the way. Mr. Trump's legal team has vowed to fight these charges that they labeled political persecution. We're joined now by KTVU political reporter Greg Lee as we break down this unprecedented day. We're also awaiting that news conference, as I mentioned a moment ago, with the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, which will bring you live as soon as it starts. Greg, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter how you feel about the former president, whether you support former President Trump or you do not like former President Trump, this is a remarkable moment in history to see a former sitting president, the optics of walking down that 15th floor hallway, flanked by both Secret Service, NYPD, and the New York court officers
into a courtroom
for criminal charges. And so innocent until proven guilty.
Sure.
But still, the point remains, he's been charged with 34 felony counts. And that is truly unprecedented. We use these words and say they're overused a lot, but it truly is historic. And not to mention a guy who is running as the leading candidate in the Republican primary in the 2024 election. So what will the impact be politically moving forward? That is another question. As we know, the former president has raised, according to his campaign, a lot of money since this indictment was handed down, since the grand jury decided to indict him, as you continue to look at this motorcade. But it truly is remarkable, and we will see how other candidates play off of this as we get closer to the primary. And when you consider that this case is likely to play out over the next 6 months, over the next year, potentially,
perhaps,
and that is in the heat of campaigning for this nomination of the GOP primary, as well if he is the nominee into a general election.
And we can't ignore the fact that he has not been shy about using this opportunity to raise money for his campaign, as we were talking about, as I mentioned earlier, that they're already selling MAGA T-shirts with the picture on it. They're not using the picture from court today. They're using an old picture from when he was president saying not guilty, but they went live and started going out to supporters, try to get, there's something for about $47 to raise money for his campaign, and that started going out right when court started earlier today.
And sort of understanding the proceedings of this, right? There was no mugshot taken today. That was waived by the judge, I'm sure for a number of reasons. He was fingerprinted, but they had sorted out that he would not be handcuffed because you imagine the optics that enter that, and he did surrender himself. This motorcade is going directly to LaGuardia Airport. He will get on Trump Force One and fly back to Mar-a-Lago, where we expect him to give remarks at 5:15. Now, one of the questions that you asked David Levine, will there be a narrowly crafted gag order? Will he not be allowed to talk about this case? And if that is the case, we're still waiting to see what happened in court. What will the impact be on the remarks he gives this afternoon? And what will they be moving forward as he continues to campaign as this case continues to play out? And we should point out, Andre, this is just one of at least 4 potential criminal cases and investigations into former President Trump.
This is the lowest on the poll of the intensity of some of the cases that he's facing.
Yeah, if you ask legal experts, that is certainly the case. They will tell you that the potential alleged election interference in Georgia is one. His role in the January 6th riot on the Capitol is another, and the holding of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago is another one of those cases. So these are just sort of the beginning of what we may be seeing as these investigations start to be revealed.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next. One of the things we're waiting to find out is whether there's a gag order on this case. We're watching right now to see if he tweets anything. We know that when he left Trump Tower to head to the courthouse today, he did tweet saying he couldn't believe he was getting arrested. So that stuff's been happening beforehand. He threw his fist up as he was leaving Trump Tower, threw his fist up as he was going into the courtroom today, or into the courthouse. When he was going into the courtroom, though, his face was pretty stoic. You couldn't really tell.
Yeah, he looked very stone-faced, and you wondered, he has a very good legal team around him, and David Levine talked about that. And and you wonder if that was something they said. And we had thought he wanted to speak to reporters as he left the courtroom today, but he walked swiftly out, then right into the vehicle. So you wonder how they are counseling him, how they are directing him to put his attention, how he should speak about this case and potentially other investigations that he is facing. But again, they have continued to label it, and other members of Congress that support him have labeled this as political persecution.
Yeah. Last half hour, we had a good conversation with David Levine, and I think we have some sound with that. If we can play a little bit of what David Levine said, and we can get a little bit more perspective here as we wait for the district attorney to publicly speak and detail the 34 felony counts against the president. Do we have that?
If he falsified records in New York, that's a pretty commonly prosecuted crime, sometimes as a misdemeanor, sometimes as a felony. Now, to be a felony, it has to be in the furtherance of another crime. And what we don't know is how the district attorney has characterized this. Now, the assumption is that it will have to do with campaign finance, but we just don't know at this point. But what the DA will have to do is to show that not only were these checks paid, which we know they were, we've seen the checks, how they were entered, were they treated improperly as legal fees, etc., and was it really in furtherance of some other crime, and what might that crime be?
Andre, you talked to David Levine about what these potential charges could be, and he talked about Class E felonies. We're seeing some new reporting from the New York Times. That is the lowest on the
felony charges,
list. And what I understand, according to the New York Times, that these are Class E felonies. Each carries a potential sentence of 4 years in prison. And so we understand these are for falsifying business records. That is what we've long suspected. That is what legal scholars had believed would be the charges related to alleged hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and potentially Karen McDougal, the Playboy model, during the 2016 campaign run-up to the election. So we will have to determine, as we await this news conference from Alvin Bragg, are those charges directly related to individual payments that were alleged to have been made to Michael Cohen?
Right, because there were a number of payments that were made, and we learned more about this case when Michael Cohen went to prison, connected to this case, and that is what this is all connected to. Michael Cohen, one of the witnesses that the grand jury heard from in their year-long investigation into this case that finally came to fruition today. So we are waiting right now. Again, we're looking live at the podium where Alvin Bragg is scheduled to speak. At the moment, we're going to keep watching it here, keep an eye on it, and stay on top.